The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings 2020 Week 9 Waiver Wire Pickup Power Rankings, NFL injuries, running back snaps, and maybe a whole lot more. If you out there want to support the show, smash the like button to the video, and in the comment section, since this is trade season, this is ad drop season, we're getting into the stretch run, we're halfway through the fantasy football year. You got a question that you want to ask, you leave it in the comment section. I shall respond to it. That's been the goal of the Monday show, just like the start sit is the Friday show. I mean, you put it in the rankings. We do those on Tuesdays. I will be back tomorrow with Jake Seeley breaking down the weekly rankings, but of course, those get amended as injuries pop up through the week. Same as the waiver wire rankings. You can find the entire list up on DraftKingsPlaybook.com and in the description of this video and podcast. I have them updated to the moment I've started this, but hey, if there's an injury that occurs after I finish filming, they get updated in the column. They get updated all the way through Tuesday, so please go check that out. If you are listening to the audio version of this podcast, remember to rate and review as always. And if you're looking for Monday night projections or showdown tips, you can hit Mayo Media Network on YouTube. Subscribe to that, by the way. You're watching it here anyway. You might as well subscribe. Help us out. But Justin Friedman has his entire breakdown for the DraftKings showdown slate. And if you go to ftndaily.com, projections and lineup builders are up there right now, along with content. If you use code Mayo, you get yourself a discount on that. Let's jump into the pickups for the week. Let's start at running back. I have Philip Lindsay ranked at number 1, only because I just took a swing over to ESPN, saw the ownership for Philip Lindsay, and that because he was dealing with the concussion all last week, he wasn't sure whether he was going to play or not. He actually dipped below the 60% threshold, so he comes in at number 1. He's likely not available in any competitive league, but hey, these are the rules of the column. If you're under 60% owned, you get to be put on the list. So you can just, guys are owned in your league, you can just cross those guys off. It's not that difficult. You don't need to yell at me that these guys aren't available in your league. It happens. Trust me. Most of you, very good people. A very minute amount of you, not so great, and don't understand how these things work. But we'll get to their actually full rankings in a second. I'll just run through the injury report very quickly. Tevin Coleman re-aggravated his knee, the same knee that caused him to go on injured reserve earlier this year. Obviously, that led to more JaMychal Hasty in that game against the Seahawks, and almost like DJ Wiki Dallas on the other side of the ball. A lot of volume. Scored a touchdown. That's great. Not a whole lot of productivity or efficiency, but it looks like it's going to be Hasty and McKinnon going forward. No extent on the injury so far to Tevin Coleman, but as of right now, they are projected to play on Thursday evening. That game could be in jeopardy, though. A.J. Dillon on the Packers tested positive for COVID-19 before the game yesterday. The results weren't known until late Sunday evening, and they came out on Monday morning, which means depending on how the contact tracing goes or how the testing goes, I mean, he's in the running back room. He's around a lot of these guys. I don't know if this game is going to end up going on Thursday. Right now, the plans are that it will happen on Thursday, but if they get more tests back, all of a sudden it's not looking like it could be on pace after Monday, on pace after Tuesday, and then Wednesday comes back and it spreads and 6 Packers have it. It might get pushed to the weekend. So just watch out for that. Right now, obviously the players that he's in the closest proximity to would be Jamal Williams, potentially Aaron Jones, if they're all in the meeting rooms together, which means the Packers could have no running backs for this game. Dexter Williams is on their practice squad right now. It's like a galaxy brain move to try to think about these different permutations of, well, if this guy's out and this guy's out and this guy's out, what actually happens? Tyler Ervin would actually be another one too that would be potentially in an enclosed area that has a higher likelihood of testing positive at this point. But Williams would be the only guy available to call up from the practice squad. We saw Seattle run into this issue last week where they just didn't have any fresh bodies left on the practice squad, and then 3 of their running backs, well, I guess Travis Homer, quote unquote, played in that game, but he didn't really play. It was all DJ Dallas. So this could be a situation where you get one guy promoted and he's just standing in the backfield against the 49ers for 100% of the snaps. So it's a situation to pay attention to, is what I'm saying, in terms of how this is going right now. Darrell Henderson injured his thigh against the Dolphins. That's the injury that he was dealing with coming into the season. When we get to the rankings, you'll see Cam Akers and Malcolm Brown bumped up a bit in that regard. But as it pertains to snap shares, the Rams ran so many plays on Sunday, over 90 plays, which is just incredible to really think about. But as the breakdown went down, in the 92 plays that they ran, Malcolm Brown played 58% of the snaps. Cam Akers played 22% of the snaps, with an additional 20% still going to Henderson. I would expect him to could probably miss a week or so, but there's the entire thing of they're on bye week, so you don't really want to dig in too much because he could be fine coming out of the bye. I would go Brown over Akers in the short term, but then once Henderson gets thrown back in the mix, then all of a sudden it's just not an enviable situation to be in. A lot like the Colts situation where Jonathan Taylor is fucking killing me. I'm not going to lie to you. He's been horrible at breaking tackles. We'll talk about the Ravens guys too. J.K. Dobbins leads the league in broken tackles of guys that are over 50 carries or more. Gus Edwards looked really good in that game too. Mark Ingram on the very lowest end of that. He's bottom 5 in the league of over 50 qualified running backs in broken tackle percentage. It's kind of the same with Jordan Wilkins, who's actually 3rd in that regard. Taylor in the bottom 10 amongst all running backs. So I don't even know what to do with this situation because it seemed like it was a hot hand type deal where Jonathan Taylor is going to get the start. Obviously, Nyheim Hines is going to work himself into the passing game, and he's going to have 4 big games a year, and that is entirely frustrating because you're never going to know when to play him. Although, I mean, his flipping in the end zone, tremendous stuff. I mean, that's going to make highlight reels. You might want to get him to the end zone more than usual, but I guess if it's going to all happen, it's going to happen all at once for Nyheim Hines, so maybe you pick the right week. And then Wilkins, you're just never going to know when this guy's going to get into the game. Yeah, next week, if we just look at the Colts, right now, Wilkins played 51% of snaps, Taylor 33%, Hines 21%. And he was able to do that much damage on 21% of snaps. That is an efficiency outlier. Now, if Jordan Wilkins could maintain over 50% for the rest of the season, that would be great. We know that's not going to happen because if he comes out, gets stuffed on the first series next week, if he even ends up starting, then Taylor comes in, breaks off a 9-yard run. All of a sudden, Jonathan Taylor's going to get 22 carries in the game. It is a horrible situation for fantasy owners to be in, and I don't really know what to do with it. I would still want Taylor the most of these 3 guys, but I am pessimistic on what his overall upside is. After being pretty optimistic that it would eventually change, they would figure this out in Indianapolis, they would give their bell cow rookie running back the rock, feed him the touchdowns, get him over 20 touches per game. It just hasn't materialized, and eventually, when the evidence is staring you in the face, you have to be like, well, I was wrong and I need to adjust and set a new level of expectation. It's weird. Like, if you think this could be a rebound situation for the Colts backfield, it might actually be a decent opportunity to go buy Jonathan Taylor because you have to know, trust me, as a Jonathan Taylor owner, that you want to fucking kill the guy. You want to cut him at this point, that if you did go to trade for him, you could probably trade 20 cents on the dollar for what he's worth. It might not be worth trading for him because you trade for him, then you have to play him. But if it kind of flips back the other way, he's like a fringy running back 1 when he gets his 20 carries. How often is that going to happen? Like I said, I have no idea. But if we're talking about value and trying to buy low and sell high, this is a legitimate buy low. The biggest problem with buying low and selling high when it pertains to fantasy football is that no one actually wants to do that. They want to, my guy had a great week. Of course he's going to have a great week every week. I would never sell right now when things are looking so great. And on the flip side, no one wants to trade for Jonathan Taylor because no one knows what's going on. But there is that variable of the unknown that comes along with it. Do we know what his upside is? His path to upside? Sure, we actually do know what it is. We know there are many roadblocks in the way, and he's probably not going to hit that upside. However, let's say Wilkins gets hurt next week, and you've traded Jonathan Taylor for like fucking Sammy Watkins or something like that. That's not a real trade. I don't even think Jonathan Taylor owners would accept that trade at this point. But if you can get him, like I said, 50 cents, 40 cents on the dollar, and you do want to gamble for a potential fringe running back 1 the rest of the year, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Taylor gets it back together. It's terrifying to do. It might blow up in your face. It might be completely worthless, but that's the downside of it too. Like, you have to be able to inherit some risk if you're playing for a playoff push right now and buying devalued assets where you can actually carve out a path to upside could be worth it. Like, let's say you have Justin Jackson right now. I don't know if anyone would accept Justin Jackson for Jonathan Taylor, but you have to understand how frustrated Jonathan Taylor owners are. And then you can even make the case, be like, oh, let's go look at this Chargers game for a second. And where are the Chargers here? Justin Jackson, he played 47% of the snaps. And listen, Joshua Kelly's not even a thing anymore. He only played 24% of that. They give the young Pope 30% of the snaps. That's probably not likely to occur again. Justin Jackson looked great against the Broncos. They were using him in the passing game. Who knows when Austin Eckler's coming back? We still don't have an update on that. He just spin it in the right way and maybe be like, Jonathan Taylor, he stinks. What has he done since week 2? Absolutely nothing. Now, if you trade Justin Jackson for Jonathan Taylor, there is a distinct possibility that Justin Jackson turns out to be better than Jonathan Taylor. But you know that he's never going to be etched into a running back 1. He's always going to be a periphery player on your team, a low-end number 2, a flex play at best because of the split situation. Taylor, also in a split situation, but when he's right, he's likely going to be the lead if he can figure his shit out. Maybe he just sucks and they're never going to play him again. I mean, like I said, that's on the table. But these are the sort of trades that you should be looking at come deadline time. Who are the most devalued assets? What can you get for cheap? And do they have a path to upside? That's the way that you need to be thinking about it right now. Maybe when I talk to Jake, not this week, maybe next week, we'll continue to rank some of the rest of the season guys. We've been doing that on the ranking show, and maybe look ahead at who has the best playoff schedules at the moment. Philadelphia still has the best. Like trading for Carson Wentz right now. If you play in, let's say you play in a 14-team league, you need to ride something. Carson Wentz looks like he's horrendous, but he has the easiest schedule in the league. And even though it didn't really come to fruition against Dallas, he gets Dallas again at some point in the fantasy playoffs, which is really nice to have. And hopefully he can get his shit together in time. Once Ertz is back, I guess Elshon is close to coming back. It doesn't seem like we'll see Deshaun Jackson again, but Goddard clearly wasn't at full speed. Now they go into their bye week. Coming out of their bye week, they should look a little bit better, you'd have to think. And Rager looks legit. Fulgham looks like a real player. He's third. Since becoming a starter on the Eagles, he's third in wide receiver fantasy points, which is just mind-blowing to think about. But he's like a real guy the rest of the year. It's guys like that coming off of the bad weeks, or someone you can project for substantial upside because of the schedule or playing time concerns, are the players that you need to be going to target right at this moment. So the rest of the injuries right now at running back, like I said, Coleman and Henderson were the two that really got banged up. Devonta Freeman is likely to not play on Monday night. He's actually out Monday night against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Just keep an eye on Wayne Gallman, see what he gets up to, because he can just take this job back from Freeman, although it's not really a valuable spot. It is almost like, listen, we just went through a week where we were trying to figure out which of the non-Chris Carson Seahawks running backs could be a capable play because there were so few running back options that someone like Wayne Gallman, if he's like check down city and ends up with like 8 targets a game because the Giants are terrible, then he's not going to have to play Tampa Bay every single week. He gets these NFC East teams and you can score fantasy points on them. So he's not irrelevant. He's a bench guy. He's a flex play at best, but that's not devoid of value. That's someone who probably should be owned if he can take this role from Freeman. So we'll see how he plays against Tampa Bay on Monday night. Aaron Jones did not play in week 9. With the quick turnaround, if that game sticks on Thursday, I don't know if we're going to see him on Thursday night. And you have all these new COVID concerns with all the running backs on the Packers. Again, Dexter Williams would be the only guy, if they all test positive, almost like the Bills tight end room when that happened, and the only guy left standing was Tyler Kroft. They're all coming back now. Lee Smith was active on Sunday. Dawson Knox should be back next week. But if it's one of those situations, I wouldn't count on having Aaron Jones this week. Chris Thompson eligible to return from the COVID list this week. We're not sure who's playing quarterback for the Jags. I guess Doug Marrone will announce that this week. Maybe Mike Glennon. That could be the way they go because Minshew's going to be out with this thumb injury. We'll see who they end up turning to, and you have to kind of downgrade. As bad as Minshew has been playing, he's still been finding his guys. Maybe there will be an upgrade at the Jags quarterback situation. Who knows? Joe Mixon is on bye in week 9. He should return after that. Ditto with Miles Sanders. Kenyon Drake, he got good news that the injury is not quite as serious as they originally thought. Maybe not a severe high ankle sprain, but he is still likely to miss week 9 against the Miami Dolphins, which would lead to a Chase Edmonds game. But Drake could be back for week 10, maybe week 11 as we're projecting that forward. Chris Carson didn't play. He should be back this week against the Bills. Carlos Hyde, not sure yet with that hamstring problem. Mark Ingram is going to continue to be questionable. He has not been placed on injured reserve. He could return after the bye week for the Baltimore Ravens. They actually played this week. They're coming off of the bye week. So you could get another game of Dobbins and Edwards, but Ingram will eventually be back. He shouldn't be back because he's by far the worst of all of the running backs, but they do seem to enjoy to use him. Jeff Wilson on injured reserve. Eckler, as I mentioned, no clue when he's coming off of injured reserve. Nick Chubb could be back for week 10 when Cleveland comes off of its bye, so pay attention to that. Could be the last of, not that Kareem Hunt was any good as the starter. Maybe he's just better as a complimentary back at this point, but Chubb should return, regain his running back, fringy 1 type role, depending on the situation. Sony Michel is still on injured reserve, and Colonel Raheem Mostert is on injured reserve. So like I said, Philip Lindsay comes in at number 1 on the list. Then I go Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Edwards is just far more likely to score the touchdowns when it comes down to it. Only because he's going to get these goal line carries. You have to hope Lamar doesn't take too much away from him in the rushing game. But between the 20s, it's not like Edwards is going to be gone, but he's just never going to be involved in the receiving game like Dobbins should be moving forward. It was almost a complete split between the two in terms of touches for the week. J.K. Dobbins actually ended up playing 66% of the snaps to Gus Edwards' 33%. But every time Edwards is on the field, like we've seen the entire season, he gets the ball in his hands, and he's quite good. Pretty good. Pretty good, Gus Edwards. Gus Bus. But I do like Edwards for the touchdown upside. Dobbins as a long-term play. You know what? I'm going to switch those right now. I think I would rather have Dobbins than Edwards just based on the upside alone. Although we've seen all these rookie running backs kind of kill us so far this year. So I'll go Dobbins number 2, Gus Edwards number 3. Zach Moss comes in at number 4. Has he usurped the situation in Buffalo? Maybe. He has looked better than Devin Singletary so far in the few games he's been back. He played 53% of the snaps to Devin Singletary's 46% of the snaps against the Patriots in a game where they were pretty much able to run at will. You saw the Patriots not bring an immense amount of pressure on Josh Allen. They kind of let them grind down the clock on themselves. It was kind of a savvy strategy, and it almost worked out for them. All they did was run the entire game. They just let Buffalo run the entire game. Moss scored the 2 touchdowns, but you still have to think that Josh Allen likes to call his own number once they get around the goal line. Moss is just incredibly difficult to trust at this point. There's going to be the want to go and get him after coming off a multi-touchdown game. He's looked good each of the past 2 weeks, but it does seem that while he is playing in the red zone, he could have a higher touchdown upside than Devin Singletary. It does appear to me like it might be a hot hand situation. If Singletary looks better in one game, they're going to end up using him. If Moss looks a little bit better, or even depending on who the opponent is and how they actually format their defense, that one of them might be a better matchup than the other. But Josh Allen is still the primary rushing touchdown getter on this team. So you always have to factor that in, that he loves calling his own number, and that takes away from the overall upside of these Bills running backs. But I do have him at number 4. LaMichael Pirine, number 5. Do you really want a Jets running back? No is the answer, although he is better than Frank Gore. You might just need a background filler. Malcolm Brown and Cam Akers, 6 and 7. I only have them down this far on the list because the Rams are going into their bye week, and Henderson might be available coming back off of it. And as we've seen, when Henderson is healthy, he's the guy getting the ball. So these guys just might go back to being useless once again. You wouldn't want to go out and spend waiver priorities on it unless you're in the deepest of leagues. JaMychal Hasty at number 8, Damian Harris at number 9, Naheem Hines at number 10. Again, you can find the entire rankings up on DKPlaybook.com, or just hit the link in the video or podcast of this show. Let's talk some wide receivers for the week. Chris Godwin will not play on Monday night with his broken finger. He should return for week 9. Antonio Brown should be active for week 9 as well as a Sunday night game against the Saints. Curious to see how all of this breaks down. I could see Antonio Brown's best game being his first game back, especially if Godwin is out. They try to pepper him, get him involved, and then we'll see how it goes on a week-to-week basis after that. Calvin Ridley exited the game on Thursday evening, so he has that bit of extension to try to get himself ready for week 9, but Atlanta has its bye in week 10. So if it's not completely healed, you're kind of out of it. Don't hurt your stud young receiver. You might see him come back in week 11, but there's a decent chance that he plays in week 9 as the x-rays came back negative on him. T.Y. Hilton exited the game with a groin injury. I wouldn't expect to see him in week 9. Kenny Golladay, unsure of his status with the hip injury. He left against the Colts, but was it because they were down by a bunch? I don't know, but you'll have to keep an update on him throughout the week as well. Quintez Cephas was not active for the game, so Marvin Hall got some extra run in the Golladay spot with Golladay out, but we saw Cephas earlier in the year actually play that role when Golladay was out, so you'll have to monitor the active reports throughout the week if Golladay can't go, if you're looking to mine some value, and that would only be in like a very deep 14-team league, a 16-team league, something like that, if you are that desperate at the position right now. Adam Humphries, wouldn't expect to see him. He took a nasty hit to the head in that Bengals game, had to be carted off. It appeared like he was okay, but concussion at minimum. It's a head injury. It could be a neck injury, so I wouldn't expect him to play next week. Marquez Callaway, Tim Patrick, Deebo Samuel, Brashad Perriman, Jamison Crowder, N'Keal Harry, Julian Edelman, who's out multiple weeks, Michael Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, Sammy Watkins, Brian Edwards, Alshon Jeffrey, and Alan Lazard all did not play last week. We'll have to update everyone. It does appear like Michael Thomas could be back next week. Emmanuel Sanders could be back next week. Almost everyone for that Tampa Bay and New Orleans game is coming back all at the right time. So we'll see how that goes. So hopefully they can have their full complement of players. In the wide receiver pickup rankings, although he has not played so far in Week 8, and I do not expect him to have a good game in Week 8 against Tampa, Sterling Shepard remains the number 1 pickup at the receiver position. Christian Kirk, number 2. Mike Williams, Jalen Reagor, Tim Patrick, although he missed the week, should return. Has looked really good in some nice matchups coming up for Drew Lock and the Broncos. And we do know that Tim Patrick has been his favorite target when healthy so far this year. Cole Beasley, Rashard Higgins, Russell Gage, Sammy Watkins, Henry Ruggs to round out the top 10. Then into Preston Williams, Curtis Samuel. Wouldn't expect that sort of Samuel usage, especially with Christian McCaffrey likely coming back next week. They probably don't need to give the ball to Curtis Samuel in the backfield anymore. Zach Pascal, Mecole Hardman, Chenault, Myers, Josh Reynolds, who's been really good, although the Rams are going on bye. His usage has been up each of the past 2 weeks, so check him out, as maybe that is where they're going with Tyler Higbee being injured and, kind of seeing a backseat role in this offense. Josh Reynolds playing more snaps. Mimsy, who I had a 45.5 over-under. I bet the over on receiving yards for Denzel Mims. I think he had 42 after the first drive, had 1 target the rest of the game, and he dropped it too, which would have been the over. So thanks for fucking nothing, Denzel Mims. The Jets. What am I doing betting on Jets players' overs? Idiot. Traquan, number 19, and Christian Blake at number 20. We saw earlier in the year when Julio missed time, Big Z, rock me, Dr. Zacchaeus, ended up coming in and filling in for him. But in the Thursday night game, it was actually Christian Blake who took over for the Ridley role. So I'm curious to see how that may end up breaking down. It may not even be worth mining at this point because the Broncos secondary is okay. That's who they get this week. That's why I like Drew Lock against the Falcons. But I don't know, if you can have someone a viable piece of the Falcons offense, it's always worth noting, maybe more of a DraftKings play when it comes down to it, because I assume that Blake will be the minimum $3,000 on DraftKings, but at the same time, and then with all the Jags guys this week, until we know who's playing quarterback, and even when we do know who's playing quarterback, you probably have to downgrade them a little bit. So I've pushed, when the rankings come out, Chark will be down, but even Keelan Cole, who had looked pretty good throughout the course of the past few weeks, Chenault might actually get an uptick because he runs these shorter routes. They use him out of the backfield a little bit. So he'd probably be my preferred target on the waiver wire over Keelan Cole this week if you're in desperate need of a receiver. Tight ends for the week. George Kittle is the huge injury here. He exited the game with an ankle injury against Seattle. It has come back negative, but there's no word on whether or not he'll play this week. This would actually, if the game gets pushed from Thursday, he might actually have a better chance of playing. If it is on Thursday, you probably don't see Debo. You probably don't see George Kittle in that game just because the turnaround is so quick, same as Tevin Coleman. If it's on Sunday, all bets are off in this situation, but you'll have to monitor his status. And again, you can check in with the waiver wire column going forward. If it says that he's going to play, then I will update it and I will move down my number 1 pickup at tight end for the week. Jordan Akins should be back for this week after the high ankle sprain and the concussion. Tyler Eifert could be back for the Jags. Dawson Knox should return for the Bills from the COVID list. He was dealing with a calf before that. No word yet on Austin Hooper. I hope you've been enjoying Harrison Bryant weeks. You enjoyed week 1 of the Harrison Bryant experience. Not so much week 2, but Austin Hooper should be back after the bye week for the Browns. I actually like him moving forward. He was good until he had the appendectomy over the 3 games going into before sitting out those games. So I like Austin Hooper as a pickup. He's going to be dropped en masse if he hasn't already with the Browns going to bye week. Zach Ertz is on injured reserve. And of course, we had Dallas Goedert come back this week. But number 1 pickup at tight end, some of this is contingent on Jordan Reed too, who was close to playing last week for the 49ers. But again, if it's a short turnaround week, we might not see Jordan Reed. At least Smelly Dwelly, Ross Dwelly, number 1 in the pickup column. Mullins looks like he's going to start Thursday night over Jimmy Garoppolo, and Dwelly is Mullins' guy. And if there's no Kittle and there's no Reed and there's no Debo Samuel, they need someone to throw to, and Dwelly could very well be that player. All the Niners become kind of interesting, but especially where Jair Alexander is going to take out either Ayuk or Kendrick Bourne, that you're going to have a guy running around in the middle of the field basically uncovered, and that's going to be Ross Dwelly if the other two guys are out. So I do like him as a plug and play. He's going to crack the top 10 of my tight end rankings this week, assuming that Reed and Kittle are both inactive for that Thursday night game. Logan Thomas at number 2, coming back off by. He's been actually quite good with Kyle Allen. All of those unrealized air yards and targets have all kind of started to come through. Been a good red zone threat for Kyle Allen and the Washington Footballs. Austin Hooper at number 3, Eric Ebron, Trey Burton, Dalton Schultz, Robert Tunyon, Mike Gesicki, who's essentially useless at this point. Fucking Gesicki, man. I had such high hopes. Then Harrison Bryant, in case Austin Hooper is out for a more extended period of time, but you probably don't need to go do that right now. Streaming quarterbacks for week 9 on the Waiver Wire. You have Matthew Stafford coming off a close to 30-point performance against the Colts last week. It's Minnesota this week. Drew Lock at Atlanta, number 2. Teddy B at Kansas City. Hopefully you see some garbage time in that one. And, with the return of Christian McCaffrey, you get him going in the passing game. Only helps out old Teddy B. He looks fine after the Thursday night game, too, as he came back in towards the end. Kyle Allen against the Giants and Kirk Cousins in division against the Lions. We'll see how that ends up going. Injuries at quarterback, it looks like Andy Dalton will be back. Jimmy Garoppolo has the ankle injury. He was just playing like shit, so we'll see if he ends up going on Thursday night. Then you have Gardner Minshew, doubtful for week 9. We'll see who ends up filling in for the Jags. You need to go pick up a defense. Well, everyone dropped the footballs going into their bye, although they were great. They got so many games against the NFC East still left to go. You just want to pick up Washington's D and almost use them every single week. This week, they get the Giants. They're going to be a top 5 defense this week, at least in terms of rankings. We'll see how it actually plays out. But the football's number 1, Arizona against Tua at home in a game where he might have to throw the ball more than 3 times. I like that matchup. Arizona's defense has been very good for fantasy the past few weeks. Even against Seattle, they were really good. Tennessee at home against Chicago. Good matchup there. A high pressure rate team against a terrible offensive line. I like all 3 of those a lot. Then you're into the second tier of the streaming defenses. You have Houston, the Chargers, the Giants at Washington, Green Bay at San Francisco, if that persists on the short week, and then Denver at Atlanta. We'll see what happens with the Niners. They were still pretty highly owned going into the week, but I think a lot of people might drop them, and because they just didn't use them against Seattle, because why do you want to use people against Seattle? But against Green Bay, if they're going to be incredibly banged up, if guys are out because of COVID on a short week at home, it's not the worst matchup in the world. Obviously, I would probably have them ranked at number 9, maybe number 7 here. They're worth doing just because the pressure they bring is so immense, and Rodgers either has a great game or a terrible game, as we're kind of seeing at this point. So those are the streaming defenses. Washington, Arizona, Tennessee would be my preferred 3, although I will adjust the rankings. Realistically, the Thursday morning DraftKings show on Mayo Media Network, subscribe to Mayo Media Network on YouTube, by the way, is when I really hammer out my defense, because I'll have all of the updated pressure stats, adjusted line yard stats, adjusted sack rate stats. They're just not out yet as I do this on a Monday morning, which makes streaming them off the waiver wire rather difficult, but you can find some good free agent defenses, some good DraftKings values. Like last week, it was Miami. Miami matched up really well. If you would use Miami on DraftKings, you probably won money this week. So shout out Miami's D. Don't expect 2 touchdowns from them, but that is the implicit want that you get from what you saw from that defense. Oh, Jared Goff is under pressure a lot. He's really bad under pressure. It's more of a better run blocking offensive line with the Rams. Miami, all of a sudden, over the past 4 weeks, have been generating a lot of pressure. So bad offensive line against a lot of pressure, against a quarterback who makes mistakes under pressure, and 2 touchdowns can happen. That's just on the table. You don't expect it to happen, but when you set it up to the week, that is the optimal outcome of what you can get. And it actually happened. It happens like 3 times a year, but if you can capitalize on it with a cheap defense, it saves you a lot of money, and you can go pick these guys up for like nothing off the waiver wire. This is why you really don't want to commit to a defense over and over and over again. Anyway, that was the week 9 rankings, injury, pickups, and everything you need to know. Hopefully, you enjoyed the show. If you did, smash the like button. You got a question, leave it in the comment section. I'll answer them over the course of the next day or so. I'll kind of pick them off as they kind of come in. Spread around the show. Of course, subscribe to Mayo Media Network. Or if you're listening to the audio podcast, please go subscribe right now. Help us out. Rankings tomorrow. on Tuesday with Jake Seeley, spread picks on Wednesday with Jeff and Tim, DraftKings picks on Thursday, Friday injury report, no Sunday live this week, but I will have a bunch of Masters content along with Houston Open golf content coming out. We're into like the stretch run of the Masters here. It's the last big golf event for the season. If you don't watch golf and you're just here for football, I suggest you go give the Saturday and Monday show for the Masters a go. Some of our best shows of the year. All right, I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!